Hi, I'm Doug from Dynamic Computing, and welcome to episode 116 of 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast. This week, we're going to be talking about PiMiga. Now, PiMiga, many of you have heard of it, but let's dig a little bit deeper into it today. The current generation of PiMiga is helmed by none other than our good friend and professional pajama model, Chris Edwards, who, of course, makes great Amiga videos on his channel, Chris Edwards Restoration. He also does videos on mini fridge power supply upgrades, so there's that. I will link to Chris's stuff in the description, including his awesome Pimiga2.0 videos. PiMiga is kind of a vision of how the Amiga could have been if Commodore had not gone belly up. It's designed to be incredibly fast, fairly intuitive, and a bit flashy too, if I'm to be honest. Did you know it's not even really running Amiga Workbench? It's running a Workbench replacement called ScalOS. Now, ScalOS was created by Stefan Summerfield as commercial software in 1999, and then it was released into public domain in 2000. Now, this particular version is 39.222, which is officially the last stable release of ScalOS. They continued development of it until 2012, and it's officially up to version 41.8, but those are all betas, so Chris wanted to stick with the theoretical stable version. ScalOS uses all of the Amiga OS APIs and aims for really good compatibility with Workbench software and games. The interface is quite similar to Amiga OS. You can see it there. It's got a lot of similarities, but also some differences. It uses 64-bit code to bypass the 4 GB limit on hard drives that Amiga OS 3.1 traditionally has. And it also creates every new window you open as a brand new Amiga OS task to enhance multitasking when you have a bunch of windows open. You can customize it like crazy, glow icons, beautiful backgrounds, retargetable graphics. It supports it natively. It does aim for 100% Amiga compatibility, and it does a good job of it. But ScalOS is a replacement for the front end of the Amiga desktop. It's not necessarily a brand new OS, and I know that's a little confusing, especially considering the name ScalOS. This is because it uses actual Kickstart 3.1 ROMs. It doesn't change anything with the ROM, which holds a lot of the operating system. And guess who provides that ROM to make PiMiga work? You do! And you do it legally because you want Amiga vendors to survive, don't you? I thought so. And how do you get these ROMs? Well, if you're like me, you own like 10 copies of the Amiga 3.1 ROM in one form or another. This one specifically uses Amiga 1200 ROMs. One way to do it is if you've got an Amiga 1200, there are utilities on AmiNet to burn the ROMs and put them on a file. You can use that. Or you can drop $10, give it to Cloanto, and buy the Amiga Forever software, which gives you a front end for WinUAE on your PC, and it includes every ROM from 1.0 up to the latest official Commodore ROM, Amiga 3.1. If you can't afford the $10 to make your PiMiga legal by supporting our vendors, well, you just might be in the wrong hobby. Chris covers the installation of PiMiga in great detail in his video, and I'll link to that right here. But I'll go over briefly and show you some images of it. First of all, you download PiMiga using your favorite torrent client. That's the way it's distributed, is through torrents. I'm not personally a fan of torrent myself, but that's the way it's distributed. That's what we're dealing with. Then you download the Raspberry Pi imaging software to your Windows, Linux, or Mac PC. It's a free download from Pi's website. Links will be in the description. Then you get yourself a nice 64 gig or larger SD card. Get a 128 or 256, doesn't really matter. And you put that in your computer, launch PiImager, and tell it to use the PiMiga software that you've just downloaded from torrent and then unzipped using the free 7-zip unzipping utility. So you browse to that image file after you unzip it, you tell it to install it, And after a couple of minutes, copies everything over to it. No problem at all. Now, you eject the little SD card, pop it back in, and usually what will pop up is a K drive, which is where you're going to put the Kickstart ROM image. Now, occasionally the K drive doesn't show up on Windows machines. You have to go into Disk Manager, you have to click on the little drive that represents the SD card, and you have to give it a drive letter. Now, me, myself, I didn't have to do that. It detected the K drive, loaded it up just fine. You copy over your Kickstart image that you've bought and paid for by buying Amiga Forever, and you name it this name right here, which is kick31a1200.rom. If you don't name it that, it ain't gonna work. Now pop your micro SD card into your Raspberry Pi and turn her on, and boom, your PiMiga screen should pop right up. So you're on your nice PiMiga screen, but we're not quite done. What you have to do is you have to hit the F12 button. If you're using a Pi 400, you hit function F2, and that gets you to F12. Now we're in the Amiga interface, which we'll talk about soon. You click on Quit here, boom, and it dumps you into a terminal. Now, this is really the only time we're going to have to use the terminal at all, okay? So it's not too hard. You type in sudo raspi-config. Try and spell it right. I was just testing you. You're going to get to this little guy here. There's a couple of things we're going to want to change by default. Let's go into Advanced, Expand File System. See that right there? That's going to ensure that all of the SD card is available for you to use. We're going to go back a level here after you do that. We're going to go to System Options. See where it says Wireless LAN? In here, you're going to enter the SSID for your wireless network. You type it in manually, so I hope you know what it is. And after that, you would put in your wireless password for that. Now you can also just very happily plug an Ethernet cable into this too. Now we go to localization options, and you're going to configure your localization, like your time zone, your locale. For instance, I'm in the United States here, so I would choose United States. If you're in someplace like England, you would set it for Europe, so the Raspberry Pi knows how to misspell words like color and armor. It will know how to put the date in the wrong format, and it will know how to mispronounce the letters Z and H. Once you've set all these things here, what you're going to do is just go down to Finish, and we're going to reboot the Pi. So those are the basics of all you're going to have to configure on the actual back-end Linux side of the Raspberry Pi and PiMiga. There are other things you can tweak, some audio settings, some display settings, things like that. You'll find those in the README file that Chris provides. Now, one of the biggest enhancements in PiMiga 2.0 over 1.5 is now we're using a 64-bit version of the Linux kernel and a 64-bit version of Amiga, which speeds things up very, very noticeably. Makes boot times tiny bit slower than the old version, like 12 seconds, but it makes the actual operating of the system so much faster. Now let's cover some cool things and some not so cool things. You can run PiMiga on any Raspberry Pi 4, or preferably the Pi 400 like this, which is their all-in-one unit that has basically a Raspberry Pi 4 in here with an integrated keyboard, which is really cool. I mean, just look how tiny that little guy is. It's so cute. You can also use a regular Raspberry Pi 4, but then of course you hook up your own separate keyboard to it. It will work with most mice. You can use the one that comes with the Pi 400. You can use any USB mouse, or I just have a nice little wireless mouse here with a little wireless dongle plugged in the back. Works fine with that. And PiMiga even works with the scroll wheel on the mouse. Of course, if you got the Pi 400, you've got your keyboard all taken care of. If you have a Pi 4, any USB keyboard will work just fine. Just get yourself a dongle that supports both the keyboard and mouse and use it with a Pi 4, you'll be fine. Don't try and use this with the Pi 3. Just don't do it, because it's not designed for it. It's not going to work well, if it works at all. Now there's one caveat with the Pi 400. You've got USB. It's a little micro USB cable that plugs into the one closest to the SD card in the back. You'll notice there's two. I always use the one closest to the SD card. But there's no separate audio output. So all of the audio for PiMiga comes right through the HDMI cable, which is fine. You hook it up to a TV, it plays to your TV. But we Amigans, we're not used to that. We're used to hooking these up to our sound systems. We're used to hooking them up to a nice set of speakers and then, you know, cranking up like Hoffman at like 3 in the morning and bugging the daylights out of our neighbors. So how do we go about getting audio out of the Pi and into a set of speakers if we don't want to use the integrated monitor or television speakers for Amiga audio? Well, easy peasy lemon squeezy. There are these cool things like this one. This is an HDMI audio extractor, and basically you have HDMI input right here. Then you've got HDMI output, just goes to your monitor. You got 5-volt power. Then it extracts the audio and either puts it out through the optic audio connector or 3.5mm jack right here. So you can use something like this and just pull the audio out and send it to whatever device you want to. This is like 15 bucks on Amazon. Works perfect. Now, for those of you who already use a real Amiga, many of us have this HD video converter. This is, you plug a SCART cable into your real Amiga, and you then plug HDMI into this end, and it displays your Amiga on any kind of HDMI display. But the other cool thing you may not even know about is this has HDMI input also. And you can just use this button to switch between SCART and HDMI. And look at that. It's got audio output built right in. So you may already own the device that will extract the audio right out of your Raspberry Pi 400 and send it to a set of speakers or stereo system or whatever you want to. A lot of us have these. You didn't even know that it could do that. Now next, you need some kind of joystick. Now I use the Logitech 710. This is a wireless joystick. It just has a standard little dongle that plugs right into one of the USB ports. This is great. This works as a 2-button joystick for those games that support Amiga 2 buttons. I haven't found any game that this doesn't work great with. That's primary fire, that's secondary. Move your dude with this or with this. Works great. These are not too expensive. Or any of the wireless or hardwired game pads, USB, they'll work just fine. But what if you want to use a traditional Amiga joystick with this? Like maybe you've got a monster joystick, maybe you're just absolutely addicted to an Atari 2600 joystick. Can you use those as a joystick on your Pi 400 or your Raspberry Pi? Our good friend Francis from Retronic Design, website's right here, link is in the description. That's a USB port, that's a 9-pin joystick port. Guess what it does? It will allow you to use virtually any 9-pin joystick on your Windows machine, usually sometimes even maybe your Mac, possibly on your Linux machine, and it should work fine on a Raspberry Pi. And you can use a regular joystick on your PiMiga and Raspberry Pi. Pretty cool. Now, the first time you go to use your joystick on your Raspberry Pi, just do the function F12, come on down here to input, and then you can just change which device you're using right here. Boom. It's detected my 710 gamepad. This is one of the ones you might use with, if you're using a traditional 9-pin. Anything that you plug in here will probably be supported and probably show up, not all of them. And look, you can have a second joystick here, third joystick here, and of course you can set up a joystick here. So if you've got a multiplayer game like a Gauntlet or something like that that uses all 4 joysticks, no problem at all, works great. Just choose your joystick and then you go to configuration and save, and it saves that and you're good to go. So what is this Amy Berry I keep talking about? Well, that's kind of the back end that the Amiga emulation runs on. I did a review of it right here with all the details about it, but basically it's the Linux version of WinUAE or FSUAE. Does a fantastic job, frequently updated. Let's take a look at a few of the features of it. Again, we get into it with our F12 button, and from here you can load up different versions of PiMiga. Like here's one that supports Shapeshifter. Here's one that has an integrated game launcher. Kind of cool. Here you can set your CPU speed. You see it's set to an 040 with just-in-time processing. If you have compatibility issues with something, set it back to an 020, set it slower, whatever. Just keep it the defaults here. This is set for a PAL Amiga, AGA. This is where it tells you to look for the particular ROM file, how much RAM you're supporting. Here's where you can add ADF files. If you have ADF files, say on an external USB drive, you can just literally add them right here and they'll show right up. There's the hard drives for PiMiga, don't mess with those. And sound settings, which we will be adjusting here in a few minutes. So it's pretty straightforward. Don't change it too much unless you know exactly what you're doing, because some of these settings are designed to work appropriately with PiMiga. But let's get into looking at the PiMiga in general here. You see, PiMiga is very similar to Workbench. ScalOS, which it uses, is similar enough. You know, you've got your system folder, which is your Workbench folder. You've got your prefs that you can go in here and change some of your settings. And it generally uses a lot of the traditional Amiga information here. It's designed to emulate a 68040 with a 68040 CPU at about a kajillion megahertz. It's got 8 megabytes of chip RAM and 256 megabytes of fast RAM, which is really cool. Let's take a look at some of the performance of this little guy. Now, we've all used benchmarking programs before. We've all used sysinfo, and we all know it and love it. Yes, it's more accurate than you think it is. It does a fairly good job. Let's take a look at the speed here. We're doing a little memory test. And look at that. It says it is 72 times faster than a 68040 running at 25 megahertz. Only, oh geez, how many is that? 1.3 million dry stones, 1,373 MIPS. Not too shabby. If I'm doing my math right, that equates to about a 1,750 megahertz 68040. Now, honestly, there's more to it than that, and it's not quite that, but it is pretty darn impressive. Now let's take a look at another trusted benchmarking program, AIBB. This one's been around for years. Now, we've all done things like the beach ball, having that process the beach ball and do a 3D rendering of it. Let's take a look at that. And that was it. It just, let's do it again. Yeah, it generated the beach ball 95 times faster than an Amiga 4000, which is pretty darn impressive. Let's take a look at some of these other tests. Oh yeah, that's pretty quick right there. Right pixel. Yeah, all right. Dry stone. Yeah. Now, do I believe this is running at 393,700 or 983 megahertz? No, I do not. That is not accurate. But it is blindingly fast. So many times faster than a regular Amiga or a 68060 or a Vampire. It's just silly. Now you'll notice the last two programs that I ran use OCS, ECS type screens. They weren't formatted quite right. They were about half height. Maybe you can tweak that and get a little change there, but you're going to find some of your OCS and ECS screens just don't look normal. Let's take a look at two programs that I installed manually on here. One of them is Personal Paint. We're going to launch P-Paint. We're going to go in NTSC high-res laced mode. All right, now it looks pretty normal, but look at this. When we're drawing something, it stops right there. See, the screen is just not formatted correctly. It still works. I mean, we still have a 640 by 480 and everything loads fine, but it's not quite a normal Amiga screen. Absolutely 100% functional though. Now let's take a look at how fast this little guy actually is. We're going to load an image. Okay, we don't care, it's been modified. Work, docs, photo, Amiga Bill. Let's open up Amiga Bill's face picture. This is from Amiga Art Contest 2021, and this was one of the winners. This was the winner in the photo category. You see how fast that opened up? It wouldn't open up that fast on your regular Amiga. Now let's look at image processing on here. We're going to do a little image processing, and something that generally takes a moment or two on a regular Amiga, even with an 040 or an 060. Let's do a watercolor effect on here. Click proceed, and it's done. Now this, you would see this drawing relatively slowly on the screen with a regular 040 chip, and it would take 20 seconds, 30 seconds to finish. Here, what, 2 or 3 seconds? Absolutely incredibly fast. Now let's see if we can exit out of here without crashing, because sometimes getting out of P-Paint crashes the system. It's just one of those things. Now let's look at another Amiga heavy hitter. Let's look at image effects, which is by far my favorite image processing program. Now, when we launch it, we're going to get a little error message about a gadget not found. I have not bothered to try and fix that yet because I don't want to mess anything up. So we're going to go into 1280 by 720, 32-bit color mode. Look at that beautiful screen, and look how quickly that opens. Now, let's open up a file. Now this is another one from the Amiga Art Contest. This one is from Robert Dugan, and this is his Amiga girl. And this particular image is 21 megabytes, okay? So we're going to load the IFF version of it, 21 megabytes. Let's see how fast it loads. And it loaded a 21 megabyte image in, what, a second and a half, 2 seconds? Not too shabby. Now, let's do a little transformation on this little one. We're going to do a swirl. Now, normally, the swirl would take about 3 to 5 minutes on a 68040 and maybe 2 to 3 minutes on a 68060. We're going to see how long it takes here. Boom. You see it's counting up down here. Dung, 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 dung. And 10, 15 seconds later, we're done. Not too shabby. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go back into Amiberry, and we're going to say, okay, CPU, you are just a regular 68040 with an FPU running at 25 megahertz, just like an Amiga 4000. We're going to resume. We're going to open up that same image again. This is running at normal Amiga 4000 speeds, not at the fast, incredibly fast speeds that Amiga or that PiMiga supports natively. And it would have loaded about 6 times by now if we had just-in-time processing enabled. I think you can see my point here that having just-in-time processing enabled makes the PiMiga an incredibly fast Amiga while still running like an Amiga. That was at least 45 or 50 seconds to load the same image that loaded in about 3 seconds before. Now we're going to do the same distort. We're going to go swirl. No changes here. We're going to click OK. And you remember this took, what, 8 seconds, 9 seconds to complete in just-in-time mode. And it hasn't even filled in the first little green dot down here yet. Waiting, waiting. Oh, hey, look, we have a green dot. Okay, this is good. And this is about how long it would take. My Amiga 1200 has an 040 running at 40 megahertz, so it's faster than this, but not that much faster. You can see this would take minutes to do instead of seconds. We're going to cancel that. This is a good time to discuss compatibility with Amiga software and Amiberry. Now, everything that Chris has included in it, which we're going to take a closer look at in a minute, generally works pretty good. There is some compatibility issues with some things that really try and hit the Amiga's chips directly, like Deluxe Paint. But Deluxe Paint has an issue with almost anything that has a retargetable graphics card in it. It just doesn't work well. It really wants to be in Amiga native modes. Now you saw the problem I had with Personal Paint, where it works perfect. I can load and save and do this and do that. Everything works fine. But occasionally when I exit out of the program, boom, locks up PiMiga. I don't know why, but the cool thing is I can tweak the settings and change them to whatever I want to and maybe get it to run perfectly well. Now, you guys have been in this industry long enough to know that sometimes you put something new in a computer and then old things just don't work anymore until you tweak them. That's what we're running into here. Now, what kind of stuff did Chris put in the Amiga installation? Let's take a look. A lot of this stuff he's put in the system drawer under programs. Personally, I put all the programs in my work partition, but you know, to each his own. Now we go here to word processors. Hey, look, there's a bunch of cool word processors. Here we've got Excellence. Look at this. Lovely. Quit out of there. Here we've got another really fantastic one. Final Copy 2. This is one of my favorites. And we'll just use a regular screen here. Absolutely beautiful. Guys like me get excited about things like word processors. Don't judge me. Now, of course, we've already looked at some of the benchmarking utilities. We won't go back into there. Here we've got RNO PDF that allows you to look at PDF files, which is really, really cool. Grab IFF, Frogger for watching videos. We'll go over that in a minute. Ooh, Final Calc, a spreadsheet. Everybody loves a good spreadsheet. Yay! Now in here, we have a bunch of internet stuff too. Let's go into internet. Now Chris includes NetSurf, which is a barely usable web browser for 68K Amigas that sometimes actually almost works, maybe. Aweb is a nice old browser, but you can look at some old stuff with that. He also includes a version of iBrowse. This is the free downloadable version that works for like maybe 15 minutes before it deactivates, which is kind of cool. I added RNO Transfer, which is the FTP program. This works absolutely brilliantly since we're already on the web on here. Connects right up to my FTP server. And if you haven't seen my video on Amiga FTP, I'll put the little link right up in the corner there. Now there are certain things that can and can't be done on the internet in no matter how fast it is. Some websites just don't come up properly. But let's go to some common ones. Let's go to AmiNet. So we're going to go to AmiNet and we'll see how fast that loads up. Very nice. You can go in here and download anything you want from AmiNet. That works absolutely fantastic. Now let's go to another website. Here's a nice well-known website, Amiga.org. We've all been here many times before. And it works pretty good on a PiMiga. Not too shabby. Yay! It's usable. Now let's take a look at some of the other cool things that Chris has included on here. We're going to go into work. We're going to go into videos. Now this PiMiga uses the Frogger program, which is a free program that allows you to play back MPEG files, which are the precursor to MP4 files by quite a few years. But it does a really good job. Now, a lot of these I can't play on here because, you know, I'll get a copyright strike. But let's look at this one that I converted just the other day. This is Wicked Game, done by our good friend, the lovely and talented Paulie Alex Bow for the Amiga Art Contest 2021. First place winner. And you can see it plays back quite nicely. Not too shabby, if you ask me. Now, we've also got a nice list of mods. Let's load up Eagle Player. And we've got about a kajillion mods here that can be played. This one is just picking one randomly. I don't even know what it's playing. But let's get Simone's mod on here. Again, from Amiga Art Contest. There we go. Not too shabby. Now, I know you love the videos, I know you love the mods. We could spend the entire day listening to gorgeous mod files, and I know how excited you all are for me to really dig deep into word processors and spreadsheets on PiMiga. That day's coming, I guarantee it. But some of you are interested in how the PiMiga handles games. Now let's pretend that we've just installed PiMiga, we haven't tweaked anything, and let's see what kind of performance we can expect out of this little beauty. Now, of course, WHD load is the choice for how we're going to be playing games on here. So let's call up a nice game. Let's call up one of my favorite games, which is Saint Dragon. I absolutely love Saint Dragon. So we're going to launch some Saint Dragon and see how she runs. This is again with the default settings, PiMiga right fresh from the factory floor. Come on, WHD load, do your thing. Well, that was weird. Let's fly our little dragon here. There we are. Oh, wait a second here. I shoot, and the explosions appear half a second later. That doesn't seem right. Let's try this again. No. That's not synchronized. Well, how disappointed are we? Let's try another game. Let's try something more modern. Let's try the new Miss Pac-Man that just came out a few weeks ago. We're going to go ahead and load the ADF file for Miss Pac-Man and see how she sounds. And that's under Work, Downloads, Ms. Pac-Man. This has got to be good, right? Because she's brand new. Okay. Wait a second here. Look at how the audio is delayed. When I eat a ghost, when I eat anything, everything is delayed by half a second or more. That's not fun. See the sound when I eat a power pellet? Delayed by half a second. Okay, something's going on here, but what is it? Well, when PiMiga shipped from the factory, and you can imagine the disappointment of the millions and millions of PiMiga fans, when it shipped from Chris's giant facility, the sound settings shipped incorrectly. You go here to F12, you hit sound buffer size 8, push audio. That's a bad thing. I don't care if you're using just generic Amy Berry. I don't care if you're running this on the fastest Raspberry Pi in the planet. You are going to have sound problems with these sound settings. You have to set the sound buffer either to minimum or 1. You have to set it to pull audio instead of push. Now we go to configuration and we hit save and resume. And now look what happens. So realistically, just make sure that buffer is set to 1 and you've got it set to push audio. And now let's take a look, actually, a listen to our audio quality on Miss Pac-Man again. So it was a real issue. I know some people got some heat over some videos they made talking about the audio quality because they didn't understand they had to make that change. But to be honest, it just sucks that it got released with those audio settings incorrect. But it's an easy fix. Now, does this mean that our Pi400 is an absolutely perfect emulation of the beautiful Paula chip and everything in the world is good? No. Audio on Raspberry Pis sucks. These are between $25 and $100 devices. They are not going to put a Pro Audio Spectrum 64 and a, and Sonic sound cards. They're not going to do that. They're going to use the cheapest sound capabilities that they can in these little Pis. And that's what we have to deal with. We have to make the best of it. It's not a PiMiga issue. It might not even be an Amy Berry issue. They might not be able to make the audio perfect if they're dealing with, mediocre sound DACs. Now, I do have a thought. What if we use a USB audio device? You can buy them off Amazon for anywhere from $15 up to $80, $100. If we have one that's compatible with Raspberry Pi and we use it on here, will it solve the audio problems? I don't know. But I'm going to try it out and see, and I'll let you know if it works. ECS games work great. AGA games work great. Some of them I've found have an issue where it cuts off a little bit of the screen, but I think that's a WHD load setting. I'm thinking of Banshee in particular, one of my favorite AGA games. The left-hand side of the screen is chopped off a little bit, but I'm just going to tweak the settings, see what I can do. Now, more modern games, like one of my favorites, Reshoot R, which is absolutely wonderful, and you need to buy it. They work fine. Now, does setting it to push audio and setting it to a buffer of 1 cure every single audio issue on the PiMiga and on the Raspberry Pi? No, it's still not pure Paula audio. And if I play games for 5, 10, 15 minutes, sometimes I'll get just a little bit of lag. It's just running a little behind, but a fraction of a second instead of half a second to a second like we were experiencing. But remember, the Raspberry Pi is a $25 to $100 product. They're not going to put a Pro Audio Spectrum or a Sound Blaster or an Ensoniq or something like that chipset in there. They're just not going to do that because it's cheap and cheerful. They're putting the cheapest hardware that they can find in there. And audio suffers. Now, I do have a thought. What if we use a little USB audio adapter? Like I've got a couple of them, 15, 20 bucks on Amazon. Some of them are $40, $50. If we find one that's compatible to the Raspberry Pi, can we route the audio out through that? And if so, is it a better quality? I don't know. I'm going to have to test it and see, and I'll let you know. Now, OCS, ECS, and AGA games all work brilliantly on the PiMiga. I've run into a few issues, like on Banshee, one of my favorite games. It slices a little bit off the left-hand side, but I think that's a WHD load tweak I'm going to have to make a change to make it run better. But most things, just fine. Audio, okay. Now, this can also play games like Doom, Quake, Heretic, Hexen, absolutely brilliantly. It does a fantastic job, and it's so unbelievably fast. Let's take a quick look at a few of those and see how it looks on a PiMiga. Those we're going to find under the Games folder. Yay! A Doom. We're going to run it at UAE 320 by 200. That should be fine. And of course, you can put the full versions on here. This is just the demo version, so it doesn't have the music with it. But look how fast that is. We're gonna pick up some items. We're gonna listen to the sounds. Bang. We'll go and blow some things up. It works just fine. Look how fast that is. That's as fast as any 486 machine I used to play this on back in the 80s. Sorry, 90s. See, this also comes with games like Heretic and Hexen. I've tried these out. They work fine. We've got good old Quake here. Here's Amy Quake. Another game I'm absolutely terrible at, but works absolutely perfect. Easy level. Where are you, monsters? I don't know. But you can see, nice and fast, fluid. Audio works just great. There's a version of Diablo, the first Diablo, that works on the Amiga now. I run it on my Vampire. It works flawlessly on there. I'm going to download it on here, make sure Diablo works on here, but I imagine it's going to work perfectly. You may have to do a little tweaking to get everything perfect, but demos in general work great too. Just remember that audio fix. Now, I'm not a big demo guy, and I'm not going to spend 5 minutes playing a demo, but they play great. Just remember, some demos actually require a 68060 chip because it uses 68060 code. And currently, Amy tops out at 68040. I don't care how fast it is. If it doesn't execute that 68060 code, some demos don't work, but most do, and they play back just fine. And these games that I showed you on here, the WHD load games, those all use Zeb Elwood's really awesome collection of WHD load games. You can find them on Facebook under the Commodore Amiga group, and you can find a link to his WHD load collections that he has. And it's a really good collection. They're all tweaked, all modernized. They work really well. Great job, Zeb. So what's my opinion on the PiMiga project? Well, Chris has poured his heart and his soul into this, and I appreciate everything that man does. It takes a really long time to pull something like this together, and he put a lot of hours into it. This is equally as fast as any WinUAE virtual machine that I've created. Works absolutely beautifully. Compatibility's good, of course, just like anything. If it's trying to hit those chips directly, like sometimes Deluxe Paint tries to do, you're going to see some problems. But in general, compatibility's fantastic. Games work great once the audio's tweaked. Tweak that audio or you're going to be unhappy. The ability to switch between OCS, ECS, AGA, and retargetable graphics screens like that on the same monitor, that's nice. It'd be great to be able to do that on the Vampire, and the newer generations of the Apollo accelerators do that. The other cool thing is on a Raspberry Pi, you're not locked into this. You're not locked into PiMiga. You want to get an SD card and just put Raspberry OS on there and Amy Berry and install your own Amiga OS 3.2 installation on there, fine. Have fun. Do what you want. You want it to be a MAME machine running arcade games? Fine. Do what you want. It's a matter of unplugging and plugging in an SD card that has software loaded on it. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. The Pi 400, the little guy down here, is also brilliant for being portable. You're going on a trip, throw that thing in your suitcase with a mouse and a couple cables and a joystick, instant Amiga. When Amiga Bill was in Texas for so long, I believe he did most of his stuff on a Raspberry Pi. Worked just fine, really works well. What about downsides? Everything has its downsides, nothing is perfect. Well, there's a few things that make me want to go back to my traditional Amigas. Number one is audio. It's fine. With the tweaks, it's fine. But honestly, my Amiga 1000 right there, Paula does a better job than on a brand new Raspberry Pi running at 2 gigahertz. It just does. It sounds better. It's more responsive. It's just the way that it is. Number 2 is ScalOS. ScalOS is cool. I like ScalOS, and I see what they were doing there. But there's some things that just have a hard time getting used to. Number 1 is right-clicking menus. You right-click, and anywhere on the screen, it's context sensitive, and it brings up a menu. It's annoying. Amiga menus are on the top of the screen. That's fine. And I often find I have to click 2 or 3 times on a menu item just to say, okay, I just clicked there, you idiot. And it just doesn't seem as responsive as Amiga OS does. That might just be me. Also, the guys who made ScalOS, it's a little bit fluffy. I mean, it really is. Hey, let's have, you know, these multicolor, beautiful icons. They look great. And different colored backgrounds for every window. Let me just break my Amiga. Different colored backgrounds for every window, and flashy this and flashy that. It's fine. It's pretty. It looks like a Macintosh. I know that. But sometimes it's better to have a stable and well-working operating system more than, you know, marshmallow fluff or a bowl full of candy. The third is that we're sort of locked into a screen display mode of 1920 by 1080. Yes, you can absolutely change it. You can change it to 1280 by 720. Heck, you can even go 640 by 480 on here. The problem is all of the icons are saved and put in their little positions, and if you try and rearrange them at a lower resolution, it honestly just doesn't work well. Getting things moved around on a lower resolution screen is difficult. It's a pain. And I got old eyes. I'm an old man here, and seeing these things, even on a nice big monitor, can be a pain sometimes. Lastly is the font choice that Chris made on the default PiMiga installation. It's this font called UFO something or other. It sucks, buddy. It sucks. Unreadable. I got a gorgeous 28-inch monitor that I normally use my PiMiga on. I'm looking at this UFO font. I'm like, you know, I need a magnifying glass because everything's mushed together and blended together. I switched that out to a more traditional Amiga font. You guys have seen it on here. 1,000 times better. Get rid of the UFO font. Put something else on there. And that's about it. So my biggest complaints are everything's too tiny, and I don't like the font because I have bad eyes and I'm a grumpy old man. Those are my complaints, okay? I can't see, us darn kids can only see this stuff. You know, is that the biggest complaint? It's not that bad. And I think ScalOS in general is a bit fluffy and looks like a Macintosh, which also sucks. So go buy yourself a Pi 400. It's the best way to run it. Get yourself a legit copy of Kickstart 3.1. They're not hard to purchase. Toss a few bucks to Chris for his hard work. I'll have the links for that in the description. And for goodness sakes, the man needs money for his pajama inventory. You know how expensive that is, being a pajama model? Send the dude a few bucks for his hard work. Huge thanks to my patrons, my wonderful, beautiful patrons who you see scrolling by on this list right here. These guys are great. Big shout out to my latest patron, Kevin Bryce. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. If you'd like to join in on the fun and help support this channel, pop on over to patreon.com/10mark. Little as $2 a month. You can be on this prestigious list. Thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe and comment below and tell me how emulation is horrible. Anyone who emulates an Amiga is a sinner and is horrible and they're ugly. Go ahead, bring it on. Follow me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. Take a look at my Instagram. I'll have all the links to all my socials in the description. Be sure to check out my new Facebook group, Amiga Artwork. We do a lot of cool things on there. But until next time, this is Doug from 10 Minute Amiga Retrocast, signing out.